Gabimaru the Hollow has a near-invincible body. When the executioner tried to behead him, the sword breaks, without even leaving a mark on Gabimaru's neck. When the inspector lady mentions he's a shinobi from Jigokuraku who was raised to become a superhuman assassin, no wonder the blade broke. Gabimaru then tells her that yes, the blade was so weak he didn't even have to use ninjutsu. This makes her curious about ninjutsu, but Gabimaru isn't interested enough to show it to her. The next day, he's sentenced to execution by being burned at the stake. They impale him with a spear and then burn him, but the spear simply breaks, and his body can handle the fire just fine. The flames do burn his clothes, though, so at night, when he's being inspected by the same woman again, he asks her for a change of clothes, but she's too serious and doesn't care about what Gabimaru wants. She'd rather he continue telling her his story. In reply, Gabimaru explains that his parents were killed by the village chief when he was born. He doesn't know the reason and doesn't care. He was raised as a shinobi, and his job has always been to kill people as ordered. Even his arrest was pre-planned by the village chief. The fellow shinobi betrayed him because he had expressed his desire to leave the village. Come next day, Gabimaru is supposed to be killed by dismemberment, but the bulls collapse before they can tear off his legs, torso, and everything. So the magister orders more bulls. But then the inspector lady tells him that although he may say he doesn't want to live, he is still subconsciously resisting death. So she asks him a question which he didn't answer last night. Why did he want to leave the village? He goes on to explain that he was the strongest shinobi in the village. He married the chief's daughter, but she was too good for their own good. Because of her nature, his senses were getting dull. That's why he wanted to leave her and the village altogether. He's Gabimaru the Hollow, after all. He doesn't feel anything. During the night when the inspector lady is on her way, someone tells her that this may be her job, but she shouldn't get involved with Gabimaru. He is a hollow, cold-blooded murderer who killed 20 men during the arrest. In fact, there's also a rumor circulating around that the shinobi of Jigokuraku have drunk the elixir of life. But the man's warning only makes her more curious about him. Next, Gabimaru survived being boiled to death. So they take him somewhere inside, and this is where Gabimaru learns that the lady he has been talking to is Yamada Asaemon Sagiri, and she's from the legendary clan of executioners, the Asaemon, and now she will personally behead him. Suddenly Gabimaru's body tenses up, and he dodges her slash because he knew it would be fatal. Turns out he actually doesn't want to die. To help him understand this, Sagiri tells him that this is because of his attachment to his wife. We see a flashback, surprise surprise, where Gabimaru's wife tells him that he isn't an empty or hollow person. He isn't bothered by the scar on her face, and someone who blushes because of a kiss from his wife simply can't be a hollow person. In the present, the clashes between him and Sagiri continue. But when Gabimaru finally recalls that the reason he wanted to leave the village is so that he and his wife can live a quiet, peaceful life together, well, now what? Is there a way? Sagiri brings out an official pardon. It's from the shogun himself. All of his past crimes will be dismissed, and he will be given protection from both the magistrate and the Jigokuraku village. But there's one condition. That is to go and bring the elixir of life from the Shinsenkyo island across the sea. Many expeditions have been sent in the past, but whoever returned was no longer human. She asks Gabimaru if he's willing to accept this offer. The magistrate and his guys who were also there take offense to this and attack, but Gabimaru unleashes his ninjutsu, Ninpo, ascetic blaze, and burns them with his flames. He's 100% ready for the mission. Sagiri has a flashback where we see her father executing a storyteller. Even after he beheaded the storyteller and his neck fell to the ground, the storyteller still didn't quite realize that he had been cut and continued telling the story. But she's not like her father. The fear of taking a life makes her hesitate a little, and so she ends up causing pain for the people she executes. Gabimaru and Sagiri go to Edo, where we learn that it's not Gabimaru who is offered a pardon, since many other renowned criminals were also there. Although they were wearing masks, the one sitting behind Gabimaru was a Kunoichi, named Yuzuriha. She easily recognizes him despite them having never met each other, and also expresses her disappointment because he's smaller than she expected. Now, even though this was her first time on the screen, I'm sure you guys can also tell she's going to be the best girl. The criminals aren't too fond of masks, so they get permission to take them off, and that's when they see the only human who returned alive from the expedition to that island. They see that the man's entire body is blooming with flowers. Out of the 60 men, he's the only survivor. When he returned, he was already ill, and within days, this is what happened to his body. The criminals were now not very sure about taking up this mission. Since the participation was voluntary, one of them decides to leave, but he gets beheaded right away by another Asamon. Here it's revealed that every single one of them will be accompanied by someone from the Asamon clan. It's also revealed that they will have to reduce their numbers, and in reply to this, someone named Aza Chobe starts killing others. Everyone acts, and within minutes it's an all-out brawl to the death, and they can't untie the ropes on their hands either. Here, the skilled criminals stand out. We're talking about the Bandit King Aza Chobe, the Kunoichi Yuzuriha, the Blade Dragon Tamiya Gantetsusai, the Giant Rokuroda, and probably the most dangerous Gabimaru, the Hollow. But the retainers are confused because he's the only one not moving. Now, Sagiri is overwhelmed by the death around her, so her senpai, Aizen, tells her that she's not suitable for this job, but when 3 criminals target her because she's supposedly a weak woman, she beheads them all. Once again, this makes her feel uncomfortable, even though she really shouldn't be feeling that way, right? Wrong. When Gabimaru tells the retainers that of course it's not okay to kill people and asks if there's another way to qualify, this makes Sagiri regain her composure. Finally, her feelings were validated. It's not okay to kill others. You gotta live with the burden. As for Gabimaru, the retainers ask criminals if they can kill him. They qualify. This left Gabimaru with no choice. He horrifically and brutally murders them all and then stands there like a demon. Sagiri tears up. All this time, what she really needed was the resolve to live with the fear and the burden that comes with taking lives. Now, only 10 criminals remained, and it was time for them to be sent to the island. On their way, Gabimaru mentions how the chief of Iwagakure is immortal. He acquired some medicine from a distant land long ago. So he tells Sagiri that the elixir of life is definitely real, but he isn't sure if they'll find it on that island. Once there, Gabimaru is told he can't even remove the ropes from his hands. Moments later, Gabimaru is hit by an iron ball that sends him flying. When he gets up again, he tells Sagiri to look. It takes some clarification, but what Gabimaru was showing her is that this criminal, Warped Keun's hands were untied. So she confronts his Asamon about it, and he tells her that she too is serious. A fight takes place between Warped Keun and Gabimaru. The former wants to test all his weapons on Gabimaru the Hollow, and Gabimaru apparently has to keep his hands tied. All of Warped Keun's weapons break, and in the end, Gabimaru kills him. The criminal's Asamon is indifferent to this. In fact, this was all worked out for him, because now he can just leave the island. He beheads the corpse, and is ready to leave with the guy's head. Sagiri tells him to be careful on his way back, but he gives an interesting reply. It's not him who has to be careful, it's her. He'll be leaving soon, while she doesn't even know what kind of moves the criminals in the Asamon have made across the island. Gabimaru took note of what the other Asamon said, especially about how if this set of criminals aren't able to bring the elixir, the shogun will send more. And this time, there will be shinobis from Iwagakure. So Gabimaru attacks Sagiri once the other Asamon is no longer there. Meanwhile, we see that the Asamon was right. In just a few hours, there have been major developments. The Asamon Aizen, the one who told Sagiri that she isn't suited for this job, gets killed by his convict, Rokuroda, the Giant. Chobe was getting strangled by another criminal, but he frees himself and kills the guy. The blonde courtsman, who seduced her Asamon for whatever reason, ends up getting killed by him. Going back to Sagiri vs. Gabimaru. It's intense, but both of them just can't land a finishing blow, which is ridiculous for Gabimaru because it's a sign of weakness. He breaks her blade and tells her to stop resisting. He'll make it painless for her. But the influence of his wife appears and stops him from killing Sagiri. He's not an emotionless person, and he isn't hollow. Sagiri also realizes that there are layers to Gabimaru's persona. She starts putting the sword back in its sheath and tells him that he's not his old self anymore, which were the exact same words his wife once told him. Similarly, the criminal named Gantetsusai, a name that hasn't taken me multiple takes to get right this entire time, cuts off his left hand after getting stung by a butterfly. His Asamon freaks out, but he explains that the butterflies are human-faced. They are not from this world. The left hand he cut off immediately turns into tree bark. We see a flashback which explains how Gantetsusai, the Blade Dragon, got convicted. When he was exchanging drinks with a daimyo, the daimyo told him that surely even he can't kill a real dragon. This hit a nerve, so he ruined the daimyo's place and ended up as a criminal. Back to the present, after cutting off his left arm, he and his Asamon see a massive, creepy face monster. Elsewhere, Gabimaru and Sagiri are surrounded by similar monsters. He knew that he shouldn't fight an unknown enemy, but there was no time to waste. He uses his ninjutsu and starts killing them ruthlessly. Gabimaru also subconsciously saves Sagiri. This causes him to be vulnerable for a moment, but conveniently, the best girl, Yuzuriha, appears with 2 Asamons. One of them cuts the monster. Yuzihira is impressed by how he killed almost all of them single-handedly. He, on the other hand, remembers his wife telling him that he should thank those who help him. So he says thanks, but follows it up with what are her intentions for approaching him. She gets close to him and tries to seduce him using her charm, but too bad, Gabimaru already has a wife. As for why she has two Asamon accompanying her, it's because he fell for her seduction. That's why. But both Gabimaru and Sagiri can see right through it. Okay, so Yuzuriha and Gabimaru form an alliance. She tries to hug him, but he pins her down again. Although this time, she traps him in a leg lock and tells him to think realistically. They can always just dispose of each other after all. Until then, he'll bring his strength to the table while she'll give them her knowledge. Apparently, she experimented on that other criminal and already knows about the human-faced butterflies who turn your body into tree bark. Gabimaru goes on to ask her why she wants to survive. In reply, she starts telling a long story, but we all know she's making it up, so she gives the real answer. She just doesn't want to die young. That's all. Sagiri, on the other hand, loses her strength and faints. Meanwhile, it turns out Aza Chobei's Asamon is actually his younger brother. They had a hard life together. Parents were killed, left to fend for themselves, but through it all, Chobei was always able to adapt to new change. This was their strength. When the bandits attacked them, he talked his way into becoming their leader. When he got arrested, he told his brother to find a way to free him. And so his brother joined the Asamon clan as a trainee, became an executioner, and was appointed to be Aza Chobei's executioner, all within a single month. Now the two brothers are going to find the elixir of life and drink it for themselves. Shogun be damned. When Sagiri wakes up, they have all relocated. Gabimaru is even preparing a meal for them. Sort of feels like she's the only serious one in the group. Anyway, after the group shares some ideas about what to do next, the other Asamon, Genji, approaches Sagiri and tells her to leave the island. He'll handle her duties for her. To begin with, she was never fit to handle a mission like this in the first place. Plus, is she even capable of killing Gabimaru if need be? Subsequently, Tenza and Nurugai try to leave the island. They're on good terms with each other, but this is where the truth of the matter slaps them in the face. They cannot leave. There are monsters, shipwrecks, and remember that Asamon who mocked Sagiri and left the island? Well, he was there, on the verge of death. It was already too late for him. The flowers have already started coming out of his body. Nurugai wasn't even sure if she wanted to live. It's her fault that everyone in her village died. It's all because of her. If she hadn't told those cruel authorities the way to her village, everyone would still be alive. Be that as it may, Tenza and Nurugai return back to the island. And while she dries her clothes, Tenza is met with a shocking revelation. Nurugai's a girl? He gets all flustered and embarrassed while Nurugai enjoys his embarrassment. She even asks him to marry her once they're safe and out. They start studying the currents around the island to find a way out. Meanwhile, Genji is serious. He wants Sagiri to leave. But then suddenly, Rokuroda, the giant, pops up out of nowhere and casually rips apart a piece of Genji's body. He's now fatally wounded and unable to get away. The man tells Sagiri to run, but of course, she doesn't want Genji to stay behind and die, so she tries to help, but Rokuroda possesses a level of strength and speed that just flat out doesn't make sense. Gabimaru enters the chat to protect Sagiri. He engages in mortal combat with Rokuroda, but try as he may, he just can't find a weakness. As for Genji, now that he's on the verge of death, he understands what Sagiri is all about. She'll take the middle path between heart and reason. He hands her his blade, considering how Sagiri lost hers back during the fight with Gabimaru, and she manages to slice Rokuroda's fingers, but that's obviously not enough. Even when Gabimaru uses his ascetic blaze, Rokuroda is just too strong. Eventually, the entire jungle is lit ablaze, and the giant starts having difficulties breathing. This makes him collapse and fall into the ground, and now, when it truly counts, Sagiri is able to finally perform a flawless execution. The fire was engulfing everything, so Sagiri and Gabimaru flee. They better find their elixir as soon as possible, or worse things are going to happen. And with that, Genji dies. Then there's Aza Chobei and his brother. While everyone's fighting for their lives, they see a couple of beauties making out, all naked, in a literal hell's paradise. What are bros doing? Anyway, so Chobei and Toma walk in on these two having fun. The blonde one is not amused and wonders how humans were able to make it so far into the island. This causes Chobei to be on guard because it means the couple having fun doesn't consider themselves humans. The pink-haired one is much more laid back than the blonde one. She even offers them a chance to join whatever they're doing before. But the blonde one tells her off and then shapeshifts into a man. He's angry with the Aza brothers for ruining a good moment. Meanwhile, Gabimaru and the others notice a young girl. She tries to run away, but they pursue her and then realize that she has some unusual supernatural abilities. Not only that, her guardian is a literal talking tree. I'm talking Lord of the Rings status here. Gabimaru and Yuzuriha corner them, which forces the tree guy into inviting them to their village. His name is Hoko. As for the little girl, her name is Mei. Hoko also tells the gang that he'll tell them of the elixir of life. Yuzuriha isn't very sure about accepting the invitation, but when Hoko reveals that there is an actual bath in the village, he's ready to go. And after some days on a dirty island infested with bugs, I don't blame her. They soon arrive at the village. It's not very flashy, or maybe it is. The village is ruined. There aren't any residents except the tree and the girl, and Hoko explains that the village has been around for 1,000 years. Gabimaru insists that they start talking about the elixir of life, but Yuzuriha wants to take her bath first. Well, who knew we'd be treated to a semi-hot spring episode in this anime? Definitely a bit of left turn. Yuzuriha enjoys a relaxing bath. Gabimaru is obviously quite annoyed. She asks him to join her, but he would never. Sagiri then joins her as well. It barely takes her a moment to relax. As for Gabimaru and Senta, they give in to their primal urge to eat it when Hoko offers them some fruits and food. Next, there's the explanation about the village. They call it Kotaku. You see, the island is divided into 3 regions. The short and the forest are called Ishu. The village they're currently in is inside the region called Hojo. And about the elixir of life, it's located in the central region of the island called Hodai. Hodai is inhabited by godlike beings called Tensen. They're immortal. Going back to the Aza brothers, yes, the ones they walked in on were 2 Tensen, making love to each other. They're easily defeated and then thrown into a pit so that they can turn into flowers and be good source of tan. Tan is what you would call the elixir of life. Next, Gabimaru also takes a bath because Sagiri insists, and she herself helps wash Mei's back. There are a few awkward moments. Mei is obviously a very reserved girl, but then Gabimaru tells her not to be embarrassed about her scar. Sagiri counters him by saying it's a bit more complicated for women, but he disagrees, and says that he knows a woman who has a much bigger scar, but is still just as beautiful as she can be. And Mei's eyes say it all. She looks at Gabimaru with eyes full of appreciation and respect. Sagiri also wonders that maybe Gabimaru isn't a horrible person after all. The man himself, though, he realizes that there's no more time to waste. They must act fast. Moving on, remember the Asamon who's guarding Nurugai, the young girl who was pleased with him and asked him to marry her when they were finally out of this? Well, he starts recalling his early life, his poverty, the lack of love from his parents, his life on the streets, and how he was ultimately taken in by a man named Shion. Yamada Asamon Shion. He is the one who executed the courtesan when she tried to seduce and then have a go at him earlier in the series. Shion is blind, but he was able to see Tenza's potential. Back to the present, Tenza and Nurugai continue searching for a current when they're interrupted by a Tensen. This one has flame-colored hair and is easily able to shrug Tenza off. Tenza uses his max speed to slice the Tensen, even manages to sever his head, but of course, as the story has been so far, Tensen are immortal. They're easily able to regenerate. Things ain't looking so hot. Tenza and Nurugai are in big trouble. Fortunately, Shion shows up and keeps them from getting killed, but despite being the one who trained Tenza, he isn't a match for Tensen either. And so, when the Tensen strikes again, Shion's throat is cut. This prompts Tenza to plunge forward and attack, but he ends up receiving a fatal blow. And it's over. For Tenza, at least. In his final moments, he requests his master Shion to take Nurugai and run. He understands the boy's request, picks up Nurugai, and runs. As for Nurugai, she cries her heart out. Tenza's going to die and there's nothing they can do about it. Tenza envisions a good future and is killed by the Tensen. Now Nurugai is genuinely angry with Shion, but he clarifies that it was his dying wish. So he simply chose to honor that. But make no mistake, they will definitely get their revenge. By this point, Gabimaru is getting impatient. He needs the elixir of life and he needs it right now. So he ignores everyone else and heads off alone towards the Hodai region. He reaches a temple and soon a Tensen arrives. It's the same one who killed Tenza. Of course, Gabimaru tries as hard as possible. We see an almost overwhelming display of his skills and techniques, but Tensen can always just regenerate. This causes Gabimaru to go all in. He just doesn't stop and starts landing a disgusting number of attacks on the Tensen. Before long, the attacks somehow start working, and then the Tensen evolves backwards. It turns into a large half-plant and half-human monster. Elegance leaves the chat, and Tenzin now attacks Gabimaru like a monster. In response, Gabimaru remembers his training and braces himself to launch his strongest ninpo, Hiboshi. But he couldn't do it. He couldn't kill the Tenzin. Mei shows up out of nowhere and rescues him before it's too late. Meanwhile, Hoko, Sagiri, and the others decide to come to Horai in search of Mei and Gabimaru. At the same time, inside the temple, we see 7 Tenzin. They meet, greet, and talk about the elixir. The one who got done dirty by Gabimaru gets verbally abused by the one who defeated the Aza brothers. Back to Hoko and the gang, he reveals that all the trees and plants around them were once human. Then there's Gabimaru. He soon opens his eyes and immediately puts on guard because right in front of his eyes are Tamiya Gantetsusai and Yamada Asamonfuchi. However, he's too weak to fight. So instead, he explains his fight with the Tenzin, which catches their interest. So they all agree to team up. Subsequently, Senta tells the group that he believes that this island is not the real Shinsenkyo. The mixed-up deities they have come across aren't gods either. And yeah, that's it. Senta concludes that everything on this island was made by someone, a human. Back to Gabimaru, he asks Mei about the Tenzin because how else was she able to save him? As it turns out, she possesses Tao. So what is Tao? Right as this conversation is going on between Gabimaru and our shy Mei, Hoko tells the others about Tao. It's essentially the flow of Qi, a combination of yin and yang, if you will. Nurugai, on the other hand, wants Shion to teach her the way of the sword. He remains unhinged, but then a number of monsters attack them. By the way, what about the Aza brothers? You'll be pleased to know that they survive as well. Chobei drags Tomi out of that pit. It's a struggle, and once they're out, they have a doshi waiting for them. Now, a doshi is different from the mindless Shoshin from the early episodes. They aren't immortal like Tenzin either. Chobei attacks him because, of course, he does, but it seems that the doshi isn't going down without a fight. There are Soshin incoming as well. However, despite receiving a deadly blow from doshi, a blow strong enough to permanently ruin a human, Chobei recovers relatively quickly. It's hard to believe, but it does seem that he somehow managed to acquire a regenerative ability as well. To be more precise, when he was in the Pit of Flowers, he gained the ability to regenerate. He also gained the ability to actually see Tao. That's why he's able to win against the doshi. He started to become kind of like a Tenzin. Meanwhile, Gabimaru and Gantetsusei are also attacked by Soshin. They're in the middle of taking care of them. Mei tells them the secret is being both strong and weak. She isn't very good at verbal communication though, so all she says is the words strong and weak. There are 2 of them, and they're here to capture Mei for whatever reason. He wants her to return to Horai, and by Horai, we mean the temple, basically. The reason they seek to do that is because they need her so that they can do whatever the Tenzin were doing when the Aza brothers walked in on them. But she's definitely lawsuit levels of too young, so what the hell? Absolutely unforgivable. Gabimaru protects her, but it's not a pleasant situation. How do they win against enemies that are so strong? Fuji helps relay Mei's vague words to them by explaining that the answer to Tao is to attain a balance between strength and weakness. That's right. The only way Gabimaru can see Doshi's Tao is if he himself accepts his weak side. This is easier said than done for Gabimaru, but he manages. He starts being able to see the Tao in the doshi, and finally succeeds in defeating them. Subsequently, Hoko and the others reach the gates of the temple. They're here in search of Gabimaru and Mei, and the elixir of life too, but it doesn't take long before a Tenzin interrupts them. This Tenzin tells them that Ton isn't an elixir. If humans consume it, they just turn into plants, which means that there's way more to the elixir of life than we initially thought. The Tenzin then overwhelms them with super fast movements. Even when Yuzuriha uses her abilities to slash Tenzin into pieces and then uses poison, all it takes is 1 or 2 moments before the Tenzin has already regenerated. It's hopeless. How do you even fight an opponent like this? But little by little, just as Gabimaru starts to figure things out, the group begins to get the hang of Tao as well. Sugiri, Senta, and Yuzuriha use their understanding of it to fight the Tenzin, and somehow, one way or the other, they actually manage to defeat this supposedly immortal opponent. But the Tenzin then turns into a massive flower and launches a projectile straight at Yuzuriha. She can't get out of the way in time. Fortunately, Senta sacrifices himself for the greater good of keeping the best girl alive. Immediately, flowers start sprouting and it becomes clear that he's done. In his final moments, he imagines himself painting the picture of Yuzuriha. She's dancing whilst holding a parasol. The Tenzin monster then fires the same projectiles at Yuzuriha and Sugiri, only this time Shion appears and saves them. Shion then asks Nurugai to quickly take care of the flowers that are blooming out of Senta as he himself prepares to fight the Tensen monster. He has already gotten a vague idea of Tao and now he's going to test it. Even after the flowers are removed, Senta's condition doesn't improve. All it does is buy time. Hoko tells them that it's too late. This is where Yuzuriha stops his bleeding by applying a salve, while Shion plunges forward to fight the monster. Now Sagiri and Nurugai attack the Tensen monster as well. They're doing this to distract it though so that Shion can land an actual fatal blow on the monster. It doesn't work either. Senta is still kicking, so he suggests attacking the oval region as it would usually be the most vulnerable point considering how Tensen is like a plant. Shion is too wounded, but somehow he succeeds in landing that killing blow. As for Senta, he dies in Yuzuriha's arms. He dies with a smile on his face. It looks like Sagiri isn't too uptight anymore because he proposes that from now on, the criminals and the Asamon will have to cooperate if they want to leave this island in one piece. They talk about it more and more, and during the conversation, Shion and Yuzuriha ask Sagiri about her relationship with Gabimaru. What kind of person is he, exactly? Yuzuriha says that maybe Gabimaru is being depicted. Maybe the chief of Iwagakure village has used a genjutsu on him. Maybe his wife doesn't even exist. It's all a lie. But there's no way. And around the same time, Gabimaru wakes up. He had collapsed because of the fight with the Doshi. He wakes up and it seems that he cannot remember the name or face of his wife. Well guys, that's the cliffhanger of the story that the first season ends on. I personally encourage you to watch the actual anime and maybe check out the manga as well. That story is definitely one of a kind when it comes to shonen anime. And that's the end of the video. As always, if you liked what you saw, subscribe to the channel. I'll be uploading a lot of videos just like this, so I'll see you at the next one. And hey, really quick, for those of you who are still here, if you get the chance, please check out my stream, link in the description. This month I'm doing charity live streams to raise some money for the Virginia Bicycling Foundation. My father died in a bicycle accident about 2 years ago, and every year in September I've been trying to raise money in his name. So if you get the chance, stop by. We'll be playing games and just trying to have a good time. Hope you guys have a wonderful evening, and stay safe out there.